Church has a big social media presence, Facebook. You have a Facebook account. How about Instagram? Anybody on Instagram? Do we have any TikTokers in the house? There's only a few bold enough to actually admit they're on TikTok. Like if you're 16 and under, you're like, yeah, TikTok. But anyone older, you stalk it, right, Christy? You just scroll and you don't want anyone to know that you're on it because you think, how am I on this? I've gone off of it. I had to go through therapy to get off. No, I'm no longer on TikTok, but I check in every once in a while. Anyone tweet, Twitter? Like 2 or 3. Snapchat? I don't get Snapchat. Come on, Elaine. That's it. Oh, yeah. That's how I got into it. I was doing youth, and I'm like, can I start a Facebook group to communicate with you? And they all looked at me like, what is a Facebook group? And I said, well, how do you want to do it? And they said, Snapchat. And I said, no, Snapchat. I don't get Snapchat. That just says my age. How about YouVersion of the Bible? I realized that you can be quite interactive. You know, you make a post and you start adding friends and you can chat. That's the way to go. Get connected on YouVersion of the Bible. Anyways, have you ever looked at somebody's post and you see what they post and you have that little thing inside of you when you see what they post and you see like that vacation picture or that meal or something they're doing and you go, man, I'd like to do that. Right? Just that little I had it happen with Brad and Kim's daughter and son-in-law, Ashley and Tom and Jackson. They were in Disney World. And we've been wanting to go as a family, kind of trying to figure out if we can ever get there, saving our money. And I saw that and I was like, that twinge came up and said, I want to be there, Disney World. Right? Maybe you've got that. Maybe you see a picture or something like that. Or you look at this and you say, man, I'd like to go on that holiday. I'd like to buy that house. You see someone posting about their new house, eat that food. I'd like to have those friends, go to that party, get that job. Maybe you follow some people that are influencers. Do you know what that term is? I'm not even sure what it is, but it's big right now. You're an influencer on social media, I guess. You just get a following and you do stuff and people follow it. But maybe there's someone who's an expert in a field, like a money person, and they make statements like, if you do this, then you can have money like I can have. And you're like, oh. If you eat this meal and this keto and this diet and this thing and work out like this and this time of day, no this time of day, no this meal and this way, you can look like me. And so you go, yeah, and you see all this stuff, and I can do that even as a preacher. Go, man, I listen to this preaching message, and it's amazing. And that church looks like it's happening, and I like that picture, and I wish I could have, I wish I could be in the south of the States, and when I got excited, everyone would stand up and wave their hankies around, Do we got any hankies in the house? Alex, you could bring a hanky one day. Start waving it. The response is different. You could wish some stuff. I wish I had, 300,000 followers on YouTube and 100,000 views on TikTok. I don't know, all that stuff. And so while it's not necessarily wrong, there are a couple things to consider when it comes to the things we see in other people's lives, things people post, things you see or observe that we desire in other people's lives or even in church life. Maybe you've looked at another church and thought, man, that's just so much better than City Center. Don't put up your hand. Because I might get crushed and hand it back to Pastor Jim if half the hands go up, right? How many of you like different? Oh, yeah. No. Okay, but you may see something, you go, that looks amazing. I wish we did that. But there's two things to consider quickly as we get into this series all about church. Is this, number one, you can't be sure if what you see is accurately reflecting what is going on in their life. Right, so you see a glimpse, you see a picture, but you don't know if it accurately reflects something that's going on in your life or in their life. For example, I remember having a best friend, Richard, when I was younger. Richard, man, if you're watching today, he probably don't, but shout out to you. And he was like my brother from another mother. I didn't have a brother, so we hung out a lot, did lots of sleepovers. And so I remember asking my mom, and maybe it wasn't just him, it was maybe other friends, but I remember asking my mom, hey, can Richard come over for a sleepover? And lots of times she'd say yes, but there was many times she would have this answer to me. Do you remember what it is? It was this. No. And I say, why? And she goes, because the house isn't clean. Now she remembers, right? The house is, and I would say, how many times do I tell you how dirty their house is? She said, you don't? I'm like, we don't think about that, but the house isn't clean. Come on, you know what I'm talking about. If you're about to invite someone over for dinner, Maybe it's a little special dinner. It isn't just casual friends. And so you get all the food ready. You get the steak or you get whatever you're doing. And you're inviting them over for dinner. And you know what happens before they come over because you want to put your best foot forward. You get the house cleaned. You put the stuff that's in the middle that you always have there. You throw it in the bedroom. You shut that door. You get everything clean so that then they walk in. They go, man, this house is... and you put on this idea that, man, yeah, like this house is always clean. My kids always behave, There's no clutter anywhere. We got it together. Right? Because nobody wants to lead with their dirt and their grit. Right? Like when you're advertising a business and stuff, you don't lead with you're in the restaurant eating a meal and it's amazing. You don't know if, they're short on staff. Sometimes you may because it's slow. You don't know if they're short on staff. They can't get food and they're the end of the month before closing down. Right? They're not advertising it as you walk in. Hey guys, guess what? We're short on staff. Our food isn't really good. We're about to close down, but come eat here. You'll enjoy it. Right? We don't advertise that side of stuff. We give pictures of what I've been calling today the glamour, the glitter, and the glitz. Right? That's the side we like to have everybody see. So that was the first issue. Pastor Jim, I'm getting off notes already. I don't know what it is about this new anointing, but here's the second thing about pictures and seeing things like I talked about. The first is you're not sure if it accurately reflects that. You go into the house and you see it's clean, but you don't know what it took to get there. You don't know how dirty it is on a regular basis. The second thing is this. You don't know what it took to get what that person had, good or bad. You don't know what it took to get what that person had. You don't know the time away from family it took to build the business, good or bad. You don't know the time spent studying for those degrees that got them that job. You don't know the time the parents spent praying on their knees for their kids and working with them and correcting them and disciplining them and working through temper tantrums and different things that allowed the kids to behave like they did and go, wow, they're so good. You don't know the time spent there. You don't know the therapy sessions in behind the scenes between husband and wife working out details of their marriage so they can keep it together and keep it healthy. You don't know the bad messages preached before the good one that you saw online and you go, man, you see the good one, but you're not seeing the bad ones that were preached before that. The mornings waking up, going to the gym, or the late nights not eating the snack food. If you know, you know. And so you see that picture, you see that car, you hear that pastor preach, envy that family, you go over to your friend's house for supper, you get that great meal, the amazing house, the kids are on best behavior, and you leave thinking, these people have everything together in their lives. I wish. And what you forget to realize and what I forget to remember is this principle that's going to launch us into today's message is this. Hidden behind all the glitter, all the glamour, all the glitz is a heavy amount of unnoticed grit. Hidden behind all the glamour, the glitter, the glitz, what you see is often a heavy amount of unnoticed grit. So there's kind of two definitions for grit. One, we're going to jump in at the end and tie in, and we're going to focus on the second kind of idea. The first is this of grit. Abrasive particles as of sand or other impurities. You get that, the grit. Abrasive particles. The other one, the idea of grit can mean this. It can mean courage, resolve, strength of character in the face of hardship. You got real grit. Real gusto, courage, strength, character in the face of hardship. And so we don't advertise the grit often. You advertise the glitter, the glitz. And so just like other areas, church has this idea of glitz. Did you know that? And glamour and glitter. The side that you see, so if you're watching today, if you're sitting here in this right now watching today, especially in these chairs, you are experiencing the glitter, the glamour, or the glitz side of church. If you're watching today, you see this, and man, it's so good. Everything's good, right? Like the music team played, and it was amazing. We did worship, and you felt the presence of God, and the words came up on the screen. We only had one issue with the words, but then if you're watching at home, you're like, the words pop up on the bottom of my TV. And then when he does scripture verses, it comes up and I can follow along and I can hear the sound and the message being delivered and we're all smiling and enjoying everybody and worshiping and praising, and we come in and God is good and everything's good. What we don't show you, and what maybe you don't know, is the hours spent on Saturdays with some people trying to figure out the camera glitches we're having on the live stream. We're still not fully there. That's behind the scenes. What you don't know is a few weeks ago, some of you may know this, our lighting board decided to quit working. So it doesn't control these lights anymore. So we go back into this back room here and we hop up awkwardly onto a table and climb up precariously and bypass on our dimmer pack to turn all the lights on. And that's all we got, on or off. But you don't know that because we don't advertise that. Hey, come in and our lights are terrible. And So I was climbing up on that table trying to get dusty because it's really dusty back there. And I shouldn't have worn my white shirt today and all this stuff. And so you may not see some of that. And so you may see me up here and think how lucky I am, how lucky Derek is to be in front of everyone on cameras and get to preach the message, throw cheeseburgers out, throw gum out, Gets to be the boss. I want to be the boss one day. Listen, it's an honor and privilege. Pastor Jim's laughing because he knows what it... Anyways. It's an honor and privilege that you've walked through this transition with me, and I'm very lucky and blessed for you to call me your pastor. But you may not see or may not know about my journey to this place. It did not start here in the lights and the camera. I didn't get up one day and say, Pastor Jim, put me up on the stage. Out of nowhere, right? It did not start here in the glitter and the glitz. I cut my teeth preaching and leading a 4- and 5-year-old classroom during revival. That may not mean anything to you, but revival meant multiple services that went way longer than anything we've ever done here. There was 3, 4, 5 hours of managing a 4- and 5-year-old classroom in the evenings. So you know why I know how to manage you guys? No, I'm just kidding. That's why I throw cheeseburgers out. Kids at heart. It's true. It will be the most talked about thing. I don't know if you'll remember what it was. It was to take it to go. But I still remember Bishop Miller throwing crayons out and saying, color outside your lines. So some kids some days like, I remember when that preacher threw cheeseburgers out, right? But I cut my teeth in the 4 and 5 leading and managing a classroom. I remember to this day, I was learning and training under someone who I was very scared of because they were intense. We had to have lesson plans. We had homework. I had homework. I don't think all teachers did this, but mine did. And I remember seeing her from across the church. Shout out to Vloy Emerson. And I would run and hide in the bathroom. Because I was like, I don't have my homework, and she carried that little thing with all the stuff for children's church, and I was like, she's coming. But guess what? She helped shape what you're seeing today. Because I started something called Basketball Boy. I created this whole series on Basketball Boy, and I still have one kid that comes up to me. He lives in Edmonton now. He's probably 25, 26, or older, and he comes up and he says, I remember Basketball Boy. And I remember the stories, And so that laid the foundation, so shout out to Vloy Emerson. I was scared of you, but thank you. It shaped. It didn't just happen. I spent many a Saturdays and evenings setting up and tearing down sound at the church I went to. I did it so much that the lead sound guy gave me a general key to the rooms in there because I needed access to so many rooms for sound. He was just like, I don't think anyone knew that. Here, confession again. Surprise, I had a key to the whole church at a young age because I was just doing so much. He's like, I'm tired of coming to the church to let you in, So he just gave it to me. But that was behind the scenes. I cut my teeth in a sound booth, doing that. We had it like this. Sound guys, it's pretty easy now. But I remember I had to sit like this with my hand on the fader. And if a preacher went like this, that meant he was going to cough. And if you didn't turn that cough down so that it wasn't heard in the sound system, first time, shame on you. Second time, shame on everyone because you got the death stare. And it was like, ugh. Right? And it meant you weren't paying attention in church. So I had to sit there, and you had about a half a second to watch the guy go, ugh, and you better turn that thing down or all hell was going to break loose. This was me. Some of you are laughing because you know that's how it was. Gosh. Cut my teeth there. Not on a stage, missing a cough and getting the look. I'm going way too long. You guys are too much fun. Ugh. I remember getting told I wasn't good enough singer to be on a worship stage. I know, it seems shocking now. Like, what? No, but I mean, I might not have been. So guess what I did? I went to university, took music, put in the time, put in the grit. And you're seeing this, but it just didn't come, and one day I'm like, I'm going to play music, and then everything came easily. I know it seems a little bit weird now as I'm doing 4, 5, 6 instruments. But that happened. See, I remember we got a couple nice cars now. It's because of my sugar mama. I didn't know I was going to say that. Some of you are like laughing, some of you are like, not appropriate. No, that's too far. But we got a couple nice cars, but guess what? I remember the car where the drive shaft fell out the bottom. And my mom just prayed it wouldn't happen while we were driving. It didn't, but I think God held it in for a few kilometers. I remember praying brakes would work because we couldn't afford to fix them and pumping the brakes. I don't know if they were more manual back in the day, but I remember her just like, stop in Jesus' name, because we couldn't fix them. I remember blankets in the back when the heater would go out -40 weather trying to keep warm. Because you're getting really cold. You're like, what? Yeah. I remember tomatoes and crackers, tomato soup and crackers. I can't eat tomato soup to this day. Because I remember getting a new outfit on my bed when I was younger, and it being like a very big event. My kids aren't here right now, but like, gosh, right? So this is what I said. I know what it's like to grow up in the grit. Some of you, come on, look at your neighbor and say, you look like. Come on, look at somebody and say, you look like you grew up in the grit. Come on, if you're watching today, look at me and say, Pastor Derek, you look like you grew up in the grit. Come on, if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, Tanika, you watch. If someone says that, you respond, tell me I look like I grew up in the grit, because that's a compliment. How many of you think you grew up in the grit a little bit? Come on, you know you grew up in the grit. Not the Ritz, yeah. When you're blue and never mind. Putting on the Ritz. This reminds me of a guy in the Bible named Paul. And he was talking to a church at Philippi. And he kind of said the same idea. And I think he was encouraging them. I think he was talking it out much like we are. And he said this in Philippians 4:12 in the New King James. He says this, I know how to be abased. I know how to abound. Everywhere in all things I have learned both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. He goes, I know what it's like to be on the top. I know what it's like to be on the bottom. I know what it's like to have. I know what it's like to have not. I know what it feels like to be on the top of the mountain, the bottom of the valley, to be abound, to be abased. This is my paraphrase of this. He goes this, I know what it's like to be in the grit, and I know what it's like to be in the glitz. He goes, I know what it's like to have the limelight. And we can see it because guess what? A lot of what we preach, the foundational stuff we minister on in church is from Paul's teaching. He wrote 2/3 of the New Testament, whether it be, redemption, salvation, righteousness, grace, all those things. We teach a lot from Paul's teachings. That's the glitz side of Paul. But how many of you know he talks about the grit? I've been stoned. Not how you think. This is church, people. Some of you'll get that later at home. You'll be eating lunch and be like, stoned. Anyways. Now some of you got it now. I said it again. He's like, I've been stoned. I've been put in jail. I've been beaten. I've been shipwrecked, right? Is that glamorous? Is that glitzy? No, that's the grit. Come on, someone say that's the grit. So you may look at a new house someone has, wishing you could be in that house like that. You want the car they have, the marriage that thrives, the kids that behave, the business that is opening new locations, the clothes that person gets to wear. You may look at me now and think, I'd love to be able to boss everyone out and have everyone hear me preaching at church just like him, get to be in front of the cameras, have my own church. What you're admiring and looking at is the glitz, but what you may be missing is the grit, because without grit, there is no glitz. I'm going somewhere. Without the grit, or I'll say this, without the grit, the glitz is very short-lived. How many of you here last week? Who was here last week? That was amazing. Let me tell you, I'll start off with this. It wasn't even my notes, but I thought I have to say this. Pastor Jim's gifts to me were unreal. If you missed those, like I haven't been more overwhelmed by gifts and, well, everybody's gifts, but just the heartfelt thing of like this was in his family for this long, and this was what was handed to him when he started ministry. Man, that was unprecedented. But it was an amazing service. How many of you have seen the nice display? And I know some of you walked by and I talked to some of you, you're like, I didn't even notice. And I'm like, how do you not notice? That display, when you come in through that door, on the left, there's that little alcove and there's a mirror with some slats and different things. How many of you have noticed that so far? Oh, thank you. That's Dennis and Verona. Where are they? I saw them, Dennis and Verona. Like, look, it's amazing in here. How many of you, we'll get to clapping later, but yeah, sure, clap now. What else was great? Let me see. There was lots. I have some stuff because I don't want to miss. I'm not going to get everyone, I promise you. I won't get everyone. The table settings. I think that was Pastor Kathy and whoever it was. Those were amazing, like just all put together. That was fantastic. The building was clean. We had our person who usually cleans called in sick like Friday and had been sick and said, I can't get to before church. And usually I'd be like, we can kind of make do. And I was like, we got people coming. So Audrey from the daycare filled in a little bit, and then Jen and her mom came Saturday night and cleaned the rest of it. I texted her and said, I'm desperate. She had work. She had her parents coming over. Bonnie came over for this service, and Bonnie showed up, and they cleaned this. You guys don't, it looked amazing, but there's things going on behind that we don't even know. That's the grit. So we had guests who came in. You may have just come in and been like, this is amazing. This church is great. Look at these chairs. And it was all different than last time. But there's things happening in behind the scenes. Because Dennis and Verona, we look at that, and we think that's so amazing. But we don't know, you don't know that they were here all week until probably 9 or 10 o'clock the night before, making sure it was done for Sunday. The grit. Making sure it was done for Sunday. You probably didn't know, well, you probably did know if you've seen our parking lot of late. It was an ocean. I put on my gear and went swimming, scuba diving out there. Hey, that's where I lost that, Twice, I think for 5 hours, somebody was in there pumping that parking lot because our drains freeze every winter in order to make sure we could have people in the parking lot. 10 hours of pumping. The kitchen, the food was amazing, Kim. It's amazing. Yeah, come on. And we came out, and they put the food out, and we ate. We just thought, wow, this was so good. Everything was, but we don't know that they were running around like mad with ovens that don't cook evenly, and people brought Instapots to get the chicken started, and then they were shuffling, and Kim was there with her thermometer and each piece of chicken going, I hope it's done, and going like that, and they were scampering around like mad. Well, we had this amazing service. I was getting prophesied over. People were telling how much they love me, and Kim's in there, sweat's dripping off of her, and like panic. And then they come and serve it, and we go, this was an amazing service. Because we see the glamour, the glitter, the glitz. There's schedules put out 3 months in advance for people serving in the church here. We schedule every 3 months. We just ask people for dates away, and they commit to the next 3 months, and we put a schedule out so that this doesn't just happen by accident. There's rehearsals going on for music. There's a tech team putting words in the computer. You can see what happens if something misses and we don't get them up, and everyone's like, myself included, like, why aren't the words up there? They're always up there, right? Somebody's doing something to make that happen. Setting up live stream, putting mics out. As you can see, I forgot to ask for it. So we last second, give me the mic. Brian saw it. That was real quick, Brian, too. I don't know what it was, but I was like, Brian. And then he looked at me, and I'm like, did some weird symbol. You guys, I don't know what it's going to be like on the live stream, right? I'm going like this because they wouldn't know what's happening. And then he comes over with a mic and awkwardly tries to go, where do I put this? Because he doesn't want to get too close and personal. I know what it's like. I've put mics on people. But yeah, church. And so this is all happening. Ushers putting cards for Hello cards, all of that. So I may be the one up here on a Sunday morning, but without you, there is no me. Maybe most preachers wouldn't say this, but I'm fully aware because I grew up in the grit. I grew up back there. And I remember getting yelled at for certain things and all that, But guess what? If a camera person and a visual person and a sound person and a kids person doesn't show up, guess what? This thing does not go like it's supposed to. And so I'm here to tell somebody they may need to hear it, maybe you don't. Guess what? You are important. And if you are a grit person, you may not get to stand up here, but I need to tell you this. The grit is just as important as the glitz. Because without the grit, the glitz doesn't take place. And I've said that to the team. We're in this together. It's no more important me standing up here than you behind a camera, than you ushering. It's just as important, trust me, because when it's not there, it's not as glitzy. Doesn't work. Come on, look at somebody beside you. Tell them, I'm important. Look at somebody else and look at them and say, you're important. Come on, if you're watching today, I didn't look at the comments from the last one. Come on, someone say who's watching online with us, say, I'm important. Let me know you're still here. That's the grit. That's the grit. Very nice. Marlene's here. Linda's still here. We are all important. How am I doing for time? Terrible. It's the new anointing. Double, I can go double. And so you may be thinking, what's he talking about grit? I don't want to, what's this grit all about? We talked about growing up in the grit. So I said, how many of you are growing up in the grit? But I want to now talk about growing up in the grit. Wait. I'm going to say that again. See, some of you grew up in age in the grit, but now I want to talk to you about growing up, maturing, developing in the grit. Because there's some things that I only think happen and you can only learn, you can only mature, and you can only grow up in if you're willing to get in the grit. There were some things I had to learn in the 4 and 5 classroom that I probably didn't want to try out on a stage here. Hey, there's some things I had to learn about serving so I knew how to treat people who are coming in and serving. Because I know what it's like. And so, but I think there's some things in life that unless you're willing to go through the grit, you miss up on some maturity or some growing up. See, there's an account in Luke 15, Luke writes this account. I'm just going to reference it. You can go look it up later. But it's about this gentleman who's got some kind of riches, some kind of inheritance. He's built up some wealth, and he has 2 sons. And one of the sons says, hey, I'm done with kind of being under you, Dad. And the typical order of how it happened is the dad would go on, the sons would serve under the dad. They'd be stewards, they'd be faithful with what was the dad's, and then at his death, the son would get the inheritance at his father's death. And this one son says, I want it now. And so the dad gives him his inheritance, and he goes and parties it up. He lives the glamorous, the glitz life, the glittery, the life. He lives it up. It's in the lights. Everyone loves him until his money runs out. And then all the lights go away. And he literally gets into the grit with the pigs. And he starts eating with them and helping them, and he's in the grit. And he comes to this revelation. He grows up and matures in the grit and goes, it would be better for me to be a servant with my dad than in this. Right? There was something that happened. And so I think the son tried to skip out on the development, the grit under his father. And here's what I want to say. If you skip the grit to try to get to the glitz, you become an insecure, immature, adult-looking kid. You may know someone like that. You may feel like we have some politicians running our country like that. Honestly, if you get the glitz without the grit, you don't know what to do. You don't know the cost it took to get there. So you end up with some sort of insecure, immature, adult-looking kids. Can I give a note to parents and guardians? If you don't have any kids, you can go, whew. If you want to have kids, listen up. If you have kids, maybe it's too late. It's for your grandkids. But listen, can I help somebody out today? Don't let your kids skip the grit no matter how hard they try and how hard it is to make them do it. Don't let them skip the grit. What do I mean that? Don't let them skip their chores. Take their screens away. Put limits on that. I know what it's like where they're like, it would just be so much easier. Don't let them skip some of that. Guess what, parents? It's okay for your kid to get second place. And if they don't get a participation trophy, now, sure, I get it. I get some of that. We've been through some of that. I can't get into all the logistics of why you would do that. But guess what? It's okay for them to get some grit happening in their life where they have to have some resolve and some character build. I tried, but I didn't get this. It's okay for them to have a chores list and wanted to get to do something and get told no. It's okay. Let them stumble and fall. Let them hurt themselves. Let them go through some stuff. I know we're trying to protect them and we want to keep them all that and guard them and give them our best, but they miss out on some growth if they never experience the grit. Come on. We got a bunch of parents. They call them, right? Helicopter parents. Man, I'm getting off. But I remember when what teachers said mattered. You know, and we kind of went, yeah, teacher. Now it's like, anyways, I'm sounding old today. I remember when. But when teachers said, and now it's like, no, like teachers are, you know, anyways, if you're teaching, you kind of know some of that shift. But let kids go through some of the grit. Don't give them all the glitter without experiencing some of the grit. Teens, young adults, single persons, students, dreamers and visionaries. That's a nice way to saying young and old, right? Because that's how we talked about it last week. Dreamers and visionaries. You can put yourself in that. If you're writing anything down, even if you're not, put this in your phone, take a picture of it. You can bring your phone up. This is one main point I want you to get for today that you got to learn, and then we're going to get into a few more things and be done here today. This is the point. Ready? Take notes, take a picture, put this down. Don't forget this when we're talking about the difference of grit and glitz is when you are experiencing the grit in your life, don't look to get away from it, look to grow up in it. That's good. Come on, when you are experiencing the grit in your life, can you even see that purple? It's tripping me out. Took a picture of Nicole and put it up there. That's a joke. Okay, when you're experiencing the grit in your life, don't look to get away from it, look to grow up in it. I think I tested that without all the spotlights on because I couldn't put them on because of the problem I mentioned before. So it washes it out a bit, but hopefully you can see it. You grow up in the grit. Don't look to run from it. Don't be like, how do I get away from this? Look to say, God, what can I do to grow up in this? This is so good. If you're getting some problems in a certain area of your life, in relationships, in a job, instead of looking to run away from what you're doing, saying, what must I do to grow up in this? Because if you're willing to grow up, you move from grit into glitz. You have to be willing to grow up. Here's just a quick example. I don't got a lot of time, but I need to talk about someone again. We talked about some people, but I need to talk about someone else who doesn't run from the grit. It was a few weeks ago, and how many of you remember we had an issue with our washrooms? Does anyone remember that? A few. You know why? Because the only reason why I knew about it on that Sunday is because someone came and told me, I think my dad said, you might want to make an announcement that we're having some issues with the washrooms, so tell everyone to go to the other washrooms. And so I found out that the washrooms were backing up. I think we've worked it out. It was to do with low-flow toilets and needing more pressure to do that. But while I was here preaching and everyone was getting blessed, there was somebody in the grit dealing with literal... because somehow everything rhymes with that. But they were in it, because what you ate and drank the night before, it was backing up. And so somebody sitting there while I get to preach and is handling that. Well, you get to sit here, and most of you, the only thing you might have known is because I announced it. If you weren't back there, you might not have known anything was going on because it got dealt with. The grit of that got dealt with. And that was Maury. Now, let me just quickly say this. He is a part-time staff, but he's not getting paid on Sundays to do that. I could say more about that. He's not. He's serving like everybody else. He's not here today because he's paid and then he goes, oh, I have to do this. No, he's here serving. And he jumped out and did this. And this is what blessed me. This is true grittiness. And I'm not asking everyone to do this. I don't even think, this is Maury. It blows my mind. But he was telling me after we were talking about it, he goes, did you hear anything? Did you notice anything? I said, no, I didn't notice anything. And he goes, did you hear the mop? And I don't know about you, but if there's a mop, right, Kristen, that mop thing is loud when you're pushing it in here. And like there's the acoustics just echo, and so if somebody's pushing anything, even trays from the kitchen, like that, and that's usually, I'm like, oh, some spill happened, you can hear the mop. But anyways, Maury, and I'm not asking, this isn't a judgment on everyone else, this is more of a just pointing out what Maury did, and he said, did you hear the mop? I was like, yeah, actually, come to think of it, I didn't. And that's because he said, that's because when I had the mop, when you got loud in your preaching, I pushed it fast. And when you got quiet in your preaching, I pushed it slow. And then fast, and then slow. That is gritty. See, because what happens is you're not in the live stream hearing this, and like, what's that sound coming from the church? It helped with the glitz, the glitter, the glamour. Without that, this does not happen. Whew. Where am I? All right, last little section here and then we're done. Too long. That's what makes City Center Church so great. Maury's, Pat's, Lord, like some of these veterans in the faith that have been gritty for years. And let me tell you, City Center is a gritty church. Our slogan for a while is the place where shift happens. Because we changed a lot. We're always changing. That's why it was that slogan. So why would you care about grit? Okay, pulling it into church and just other things. And I hope you know that this principle, which I'll say, is not just for church. This helps in life. If you want to see some glitz in an area, you got to be prepared to get in the grit. Matthew 5:13 in the NASB, you are the salt of the earth. But if the salt has become tasteless, how can it be made salty again? If no longer good for anything, it is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by people. So here's the other side of the grit definition. Remember, it was like an abrasive kind of quality. I saw this verse that says, you are the salt of the earth. Salt is gritty. It's got some grit to it if you have big chunks, especially like sea salt. That's pretty gritty. You're grinding some of that down. But it says, you are the salt of the earth. I took this picture. We are the grit of the earth a little bit. And if the salt loses its flavor, listen, I was pondering this. I was saying, salt and sand don't have a lot of textural difference potentially. And it doesn't say you're the sand of the earth. It says you're the salt. I don't know about you, but I've been on the beach before. Tanning, getting rid of white winter, on our skin. And you're at the lake and on the beach and you've made a nice lunch and it's in a cooler and you've got your meat and you've got your cheese and you've got your lettuce. Everyone's getting hungry now because it's after lunch. And you got your maybe bacon and cucumber and different things, right? And it's just the best sandwich, some Brussels sprouts maybe, and it's in the cooler and you've been on the beach all day and you're like, oh, I want that sandwich. And you go in, you open the cooler, and you sit the sandwich and you look at it and you go, this is going to be so good. And you take a bite. And you bite, and all of a sudden, take another bite. It's like kind of grindy, and then you realize your kids have been in there going for snacks earlier, and they didn't brush the sand off their hands enough, and you got it, and they got in there, and you went to bite your sandwich, and you're eating sand. And it's gritty. Right? But that's very similar to if you had a sandwich, right? The exact same sandwich, but instead of sand, maybe there was some salt on that cucumber or that tomato, and it just adds enough flavor, and you go, and that salt's really good. It's very similar texture. But the difference is the flavor. And if salt loses its flavor, or if it becomes tasteless, it loses its purpose. It's like sand. And so I think this is how salt or grit loses its purpose, is if it stops being, how did the definition of showing like fervor, of going after it, of showing courage in the face of difficulty. If you stop being gritty, then you lose your flavor. If salt stops being gritty or stops doing what its purpose is, it loses its flavor. If you don't put salt on anything, it doesn't have any purpose. So if we're not willing to be gritty, we kind of lose our flavor as a church, or as what we're called to do as Christians. Let me show you again why this is. But this is how I said it here. Let me just read it. If salt loses its strength, if it can't find its courage, if salt has lost its resolve, or grit loses its strength, grit loses its courage, grit lost its resolve, then the salt is not being put to use, or the grit isn't, it has no purpose, it becomes tasteless. But if the grit keeps its taste, it has a purpose. Here's what I said. Grit for grit's sake has no purpose, but grit for glit's sake is full of purpose. Let me show you what I mean. Because we're not all just trying to be up here, yay, like tooting our own horns or anything like that. But grit, for glit's sake, has a lot of purpose, because Matthew continues and says this. Let me quickly define glitter and glitz quickly, and then we're done. A few minutes. It's to shine, this is what glitter or glitz means, to shine by reflection with flashes of brilliant light, to be very exciting or have a brilliant, attractive quality. See, we as Christians, as Jesus' representatives, are called to have a brilliant, attractive quality. We are called to shine. So Matthew 5:14-15 says this, you are the light of the world. We are called to be glittery, glamoury, and glitzy. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all those who are in the house. See, when we are willing to get gritty, when we are willing to keep our flavor and go after it, when we are willing to become gritty in order to allow the glitz and the glamour, it shines and it reflects, and people come in and go, there's something different about what's going on here. There's something different about seeing people give to each other and sacrifice and love on each other and do some of this. It blows my mind when I see what Kim's doing and Maury's doing and you are doing, and you go, man, this is something different. And it says that we shine when we do this, and we actually reflect the things that Jesus taught us how to do and what we should do, which is loving one another, serving one another, giving for one another, and it ends up shining. And so when we are called to be the light, when they see our marriage full of the love of God, when they see this church laying down their life, when they see someone who is freed from addiction, when they see the hungry being fed, it's going to give light to all those around. It's going to represent, they're going to go, there's something different here. And this is what Matthew 5:16 says. Your light must shine before people. Your glitz must happen before people in such a way that they see your good works. What do they see? Your good works, which is another word, they see your grit. They see your grit, which leads to some glitz, which shines before people. And watch what it does here. It says, and glorify your Father who is in heaven. Your light is supposed to shine, that they see the grit that ends up glorifying God who is in heaven. Here's a thing how I said it. You can write it down, take a picture. Glitz growing up through grit will glorify the author of all of it, because I had to make it sound the same. Glitz growing up through grit will glorify the author of all of it, who is God. And so here's the final word. Music team, come on up. Thank you for listening so intently. The reason I'm saying all this about grit, and it's what I got into at the beginning, because I hear God saying, City Center Church, and you guys are a part of this, you're included, you're about to get glitzed up. Some of you are about to get glitzed in your life. Not blitzed, glitzed. I heard God saying He's getting ready to shine. He's getting ready to show out. He's getting ready to show forth. But we have to have made sure we've grown up in the grit in order to handle what's going to happen. And so in order to grow, sometimes we need enough people willing to do the grit. In order to be glittery and glamoury and glitz and have our light shine the way it is, we're going to have some people who are going to have to step up and do this. But I heard God say, I'm about to get things glitzed. Woo! And you go, not just church, no, for your life. For your life. Listen, someone's about to get glitzed up. Your business, if you're a business owner, is about to get glitzed up. Your health is about to get glitzed. Your marriage is about to be glitzed. Come on, how many of you could use some more glitzing in your marriage? Okay, marriages are good, that's fine. Maybe there's no married people here. Your finances are about to get glitzed. That one got a lot more than marriages. I'm just going to say there's not a lot of married people here. That's probably why that was like that. How many of your marriages get to get blitzed? No. Finances, woo! But God is getting ready to glitz this church, but it starts with willing to grow up in the grit. See, listen, I know the grit can be difficult. If you're pushing through circumstances and you've been going after something and it's not been working, it's real gritty. And you may be going, I don't know how this thing can turn out glitzy or glamorous or amazing. And so maybe you're in the grit waiting for the glitz, but I need to say this, and then one more statement, challenge, and we're done. There is a grace for the grit to help you get glitzed. Somebody needs to hear that. There is a grace for the grit to help you get blitzed. So when it's too much, when it's too hard, when it's too difficult, there's a grace to carry you. Pastor Jim's been talking about it. Paul said it. My grace is made perfect in weakness, when we come to the end of ourselves. And so there may be different people here. Some may be here in City Center Church and you've grown up in the grit. And you've been at it for a while. Maybe there's some here that were in the grit in a season in the past and you've stepped back for different reasons. Maybe some here have been coming for a while and you haven't got into the grit. We haven't really given you many opportunities to get into the grit or talked about it, but we are now. Or maybe you're new here and you're not even sure if you like the glitz of City Center Church. We talked about it. I'm just checking out the church. That's fine. You may not want to get involved with the grit. But I believe for us to step into the next season of what God wants us to do, the glamour, the glitz, the light that we're going to shine forth in this city, we need to be stepping into the grit God is demanding. So whether you're churched or not, whether you're sure you're going to come here or not, whether you're watching for the first time or not, and you're going, I'm not sure about this church thing, here's the principle, like I said, that's true for life, for relationships, for your business, for school, for anything that you want to prove in or get glittery in or get glitzed in and all that. This is the thing. The grittier, the glitzier. The grittier, the glitzier. The grittier, the glitzier. You don't like where something's at, get gritty. But there's a grace. It's a grace, Rob. Two challenges and I'm done. Ooh, Jesus. Too long. Oh well. Here's two challenges. If you're a Christian, if you're a Jesus follower, here's your challenge for the first part. In which ways is God challenging you to get gritty? Not just here, in your life. In what ways is God challenging you to get gritty? Now, if you're a Jesus follower, that's God. If you're not, how about just even which ways do you know in life you should be challenging yourself to get grittier? And then the second thing is this, specifically for church here, in which ways am I called to get gritty in the church? You knew I was probably going here. See, we've had a gritty team for the last 20 years. But that team's ready to get some glitz. They've put in the time. And what an amazing team it's been. But there's some of you that need to step up in the grit. Some of you for this next season so we can go to the next thing. Because it just, again, I started off with saying it can't be me by myself doing it all. It doesn't work. It's us together. We're doing this together. And so the challenge, what am I called to get gritty in the church over this next season? Because in that is some growth. In that is growth. Whether it's here you feel like you want to be on a stage preaching, whether it's excelling in a business or come get gritty. You'll learn a lot of things. You'll grow up in it. So starting next week, I'm going to do part 2. Beyonce is going to come to church. Through my voice and maybe my dance. And you'll never want to see it again, I'm sure. She's going to tell us how church in one of her songs, what they have in common. And we're going to start next week. We're going to have at the welcome booth, there's going to be a place to start signing up for some serving areas. If you go to our website, citycenterchurch.ca/join a team, it's one of the tabs up there. You can start seeing we have a page where you can register. If you're like, hey, I'd like to find out where to serve, you can already get a head start on that. Next week, we're going to give a place to sign up. 2 weeks from now, I'm actually going to talk about all the places that you can get gritty in our church. And then we're going to do a mass sign up. We're going to have like 8 iPads, and you're going to be able to go sign up right online, right there if you want, and jump right in. And we're going to get this next generation, because I believe there's glory that God wants to do here, but it takes a team. You hear me say this lots. You're not as strong as the dream. You're as strong as the... Oh, good. Strong as the team. Right? And so we're in this together. I'm excited, but God's calling us up to the next level. I don't know if you guys are like totally happy or totally just like, what's going on here? So come next day, Beyonce, and be ready. Saying, God, glitz me up. Not beam me up, glitz me up now. Hallelujah, that's all I got. That's all I got. Okay, quick announcements. Quick announcements, then we're out of here. Tanika did a good job, but I know a lot of you come in late. Someday we'll change that in our church culture. I don't know how. Gosh. Anyways. But she made an announcement we have forms now from ushers. We actually need people to sign up on Easter Sunday. There's 2 things coming up. Easter community service and meal. First time in over 2 years. 2 years and a few months that we're going to be filling this place. I'm going to be emailing the Doorstep Go team this week, telling you what we're going to do. All you're going to be doing is dropping off chocolates and giving a personal invite to Sunday, April 17th Easter service. We're starting at 11:30. It's going to be different. All the tables are going to be set up. We're doing a hybrid Christmas kind of Easter one. All the tables are going to be set up, so you'll be sitting at tables for church. It's going to be different. If it fails, it was Brad's idea. If it was successful, it was my idea. That's opposite of Leadership 101, right? Like, it's exactly opposite of what you should do. But no, we talked about it, and I'm like, it may fail, but hey, you got to try some things sometimes and see if it works. But Brad is going to be preaching. I'm sure he's one of the few people that could try to control that noise and stuff. So church starts at 11:30, so we can allow other volunteers from other churches to come help us. That's why we're doing it. So they can go to their church service, come help us. We need help on Tuesday, April 12th. 6 o'clock, this building is going to get transformed. We set up all the tables. We get all the food prep. There's a lot to do because we're believing for 400 to 500 people going to be served here. And so we do it all 6 o'clock. We're having pizza to bribe you. Let's be honest what it is. Bribe you to be here. And it also saves you from having to go home and make supper. Come here, have some pizza, and then we're going to set up on Tuesday, April 12th. So we got some forms for that. And then Sunday, we need help serving. We have people who scoop the food and people who walk out and serve everybody. We serve everyone who comes in. So we need volunteers for that. So ushers have forms. What we need is your name. Check off which one you can do. If it's both, check off both spots and return it. We're going to put you into a texting database and just give you some information on that and make sure you're with that. So if you can help, Tuesday, April 12th, if you are willing to get in the grit on Tuesday, April 12th and April 17th, now's a good time to start. Put up your hand. Come on, we got ushers. And you can turn them into the welcome booth after. Come on, hands, Tuesday the 12th or April 17th. If you have a hello card,